Hey friends, so we're back here with American Miscellany, and I'm pretty excited to get on to our next essay number 131, Peace Societies. So this book that we're reading together here it's American Miscellany. It's a collection of essays published in 1865. So this goes way back in history, and it's kind of an exciting perspective. Our last essay was essay number 130, Lectures on Astronomy, number 6. And guys, I just want to remind you that I'm reading all of this for the first time along with you guys. So I'm learning something too, and I'm really excited to get here into our next essay. We're here on page 321, and once again, this is essay number 131, Peace Societies. Civilized nations are evidently for a season tired of war. The universality of the change is scarce less remarkable than its suddenness. Half a century ago, the trumpet's martial peal resounded in all quarters of the globe. Citizens in those days, rejoicing in the name of volunteers, girded themselves for battle with an alacrity which evinced anything rather than a dislike to the terrific pastime. To talk of patriotism is all very well, of being compelled to don harness in self-defense, of being summoned to the battlefield by the pleading cries of sisters, children, and wives. The truth is, we required very little prompting. The spirit of the age was decidedly warlike, and in the language of Mercutio, alla stoccata, carried it away. How then has it come about that within so short a period, a reaction so decidedly beneficial has taken place almost simultaneously in every quarter of the globe? That in reference to this momentous subject, public feeling should have undergone a change at once so complete, desirable, and sudden? To say that it has been effected by the humanizing influence of Christianity alone would be going too far. Christianity has done much. The diffusion of information and the spread of knowledge, more strictly secular in its nature, may have done something. The experience of the national benefit consequent upon the commercial intercourse of countries at peace may have contributed its share. But the universality of the moral revolution must, we are afraid, be traced to a much more obvious, though far less gratifying cause than any other we could specify. The fact is, mankind in general have become tired of war, just for the same reason that we of these islands have got sick of poetry. Byron effected the latter change, just as Napoleon Byron affected the latter change, just as Napoleon accomplished the other. In both cases, the thing was overdriven, and satiation has succeeded in begetting disgust. Tired of war, men are now cultivating the sciences, studying politics, reading books and periodicals in which useful information and harmless amusement are delightfully combined. This, however, will not itself prevent them eventually from relapsing anew into the military mania of other days. The old spirit will come back upon the world unless something much more effective is accomplished than that which is the mere politician, philosopher, or sage can at any time achieve. But it is obvious that the same cause which at present facilitates the spread of merely secular facilitates also the diffusion of that more important learning by means of which men, by becoming wise for eternity, become wise also for time. What then is the immediate duty of all who wish well to the best interests of the human race? Is it to waste time in merely guessing at the causes which have contributed to the change so often already specified? This would not be wise. It would be at least a very questionable expenditure of talents and of time. True philosophy teaches us, previous to an investigation of their origin, to take advantage of circumstances as they are. Now, one thing is certain, mankind have recently become fervent in their praise of peace. They are inflicted to listen with attentive patience to anyone who will take the trouble of discoursing to them on the subject, and the man who, possessing the ability, does not avail himself of the opportunity which this state of things affords to advance the interests of humanity by a judicious advocacy of the cause of peace, proves himself, if a Christian at all, to be less wise in his generation than thousands whose pretensions are far less high. After these observations, it is scarcely necessary to announce the decided pleasures with which we have recently witnessed the advantage which, in many parts of the world, genuine philanthropists and Christian patriots are taking of the improved tone of public sentiment and feeling in reference to the evils of war and the advantages of peace, to inculcate doctrines and deliver maxims calculated, if sincerely imbibed and followed up, to render permanent a change which, but for this, will assuredly prove equally fallacious and temporary. Peace societies, our readers are aware, have been in existence for upward of 30 years. They started into organized being, both here and in Great Britain, and what is very singular, almost simultaneously, a little after the Battle of Waterloo. They have since arisen in some quarters on the continent. Without attracting much notice, the members of these institutions prosecuted their philanthropic purpose for years. And now they have their reward. A tide of public approbation favorable to the grand object they are striving to promote is fast setting in. To the United States of America is due the honor of the actual formation of the first society, and to the city of New York must be awarded the priority in this noble cause. A peace society was formed here in the year 1815, as also in Massachusetts and Ohio. The London Society for the Promotion of Permanent and Universal Peace was formally established about midsummer 1816, exactly 1 year after the awful events at Waterloo. It had, however, been projected, and preliminary meetings had been held so early as 1814. But the continuance of the war and the intoxication of national glory appear to have impeded its public establishment. The meeting at which the formation of the London Society was resolved on was held at the house of William Allen, the eminent philanthropist and philosopher lately deceased, in Plough Court, in the city of London. It is not uninteresting to observe the names of the 12 men who were then first appointed as the committee of the infant society. The committee consisted of the venerable and venerated Thomas Clarkson, his brother John Clarkson, William Allen, William Crawford, Charles Stokes Dudley, Thomas Harper, minister, Robert Marston, Joseph Tregellis Price, Evan Rees, John Scott, Frederick Smith, and Thomas Sturge. Since the formation of this society in the United Kingdom, numerous associations have been formed for the same object. The number of tracts and publications printed by the Society to the present time is about 2 millions, and these tracts have been circulated in various languages and in all the quarters of the globe. But by far the most important labor of the Society was the summoning of a convention of its friends from various parts of the world in London in 1843. The object of this convention was to deliberate upon the best means of showing to the world the evils of war and of promoting peace. The number of delegates appointed was 324, of whom 292 were from Great Britain and Ireland, 26 from the United States of America, and 6 from the continent of Europe. The convention lasted 3 days and was attended by about 150 of the delegates, besides a number of visitors, both ladies and gentlemen. The result of this convention has been to give an impetus to the cause greater than it ever before received. The Friends of Peace have been stimulated, and fresh energy is infused into their operations. The number of publications and periodicals has been extended, lectures have greatly increased, and new auxiliaries are constantly making their appearance. While, however, much good may have resulted from the agency employed by such institutions to circulate tracts and periodicals favorable to their views, we cannot help thinking that one of the chief blessings society gains from them is the amount of influence exercised over the popular mind by the speeches delivered on occasion of their annual and other meetings. Tracts and magazines are all very well. We all decidedly approve of the advice given from so many quarters in reference to international addresses, but for producing a general sensation, there is nothing so effective as a good speech. Even the convention referred to, but for the eloquence of many of its public speakers, would have scarce achieved the triumphs it has subsequently gained. These speeches are not mere declamatory harangues, holding up war to detestation by mere exhibition of its horrors, nor do they advocate peace merely from the temporary blessing it is inculcated to impart. Their tendency is to exhibit how utterly at variance with the principles of the gospel of Christ are the exercise or cultivation of these feelings in which war originates. Now, this is what all along we would be at. We may no doubt advance many reasons against war and in favor of peace, but why should believers in a revelation from God not just begin at the beginning? Why not speak out with fearlessness and fidelity? Why not say that men are by nature lovers of war? That though from the influence of the same causes that render men for a time tired of anything, the civilized human family are at present disposed to vote war a nuisance, they, notwithstanding, when the mood comes round, will be as much inclined for it as ever. If we be adverse to war because we are better Christians than our forefathers, it is good. But if the feeling originate merely in being tired for a time of the game, it will not be lasting. Now, however, is the time for Christian philanthropists to bestir himself. Christianity alone can render permanent a change which originated in a mere satiation of war as a trade. Let Christian ministers, therefore, bring the subject prominently before the minds of the hearers, giving distinct utterance to the truth that, as the gospel of Christ recommends peace, so nothing but the same gospel can render peace permanent. A better moment than the present cannot be supposed for the inculcation of such doctrines, appalled and agonized as we have been by the recent Mexican War. Let, therefore, as many meetings as possible be got up for the purpose of bringing out the views of those who believe that mankind can only be kept from relapsing into their old martial propensities by the influence of genuine Christianity. For we cannot conceal a suspicion that too little stress has been laid upon this view of things. To judge from the language which many use, we might almost fancy that human nature is improving of itself, that men are becoming peaceful just through the diffusion of science and literature. Leviathan, alas, is not to be so easily tamed. They have read history to little purpose who are not aware that men naturally love to go to war, that they must have something to do, something to excite them, and that the mania of war will never yield to the mere influence of peace societies unless they recognize Christianity as the only system that can ultimately regenerate mankind. This, we are glad to discover, the members of peace institutions are almost universally doing. And this being the case, we must, in the use of our influence, bid them Godspeed. What so desirable as peace? What so terrible as war? And yet, after all our experience of these, there is a principle in human nature which, unless checked by the gospel of peace, will again plunge us into all its horrors. There is, we again repeat, a danger that at present we mistake the mere lull of the storm for a permanent calm, that because men are clamorous for peace, now they will be so always. Nothing can render us secure but the eradication of the principles in which war originates. This can be achieved by Christianity alone? Let it therefore be distinctly announced that such is the fact. Shilly-shallying, while it does good at no time, is utterly ruinous here. While the enemy sleeps, let us endeavor to eradicate the tares. Glory to God in the highest, peace on earth, and goodwill to men, formed the burden of the angelic song on the night of the birth of the Prince of Peace. The principles he taught, when universally embraced, will banish war from the earth, but nothing else will. Science, philosophy, art may be cultivated while men are under the influence of a temporary satiation of the game of war, but these will never eradicate the principle. The tendency to war has its origin in elements with which the religion of Christ only can successfully grapple. This, we are glad to observe, is now distinctly recognized in the majority of the speeches delivered at peace meetings.